So today I watched another old movie. This time really old. Um, I mean, I've seen older, but still old relatively. At this point it's actually nearly 40 years old, so quite old somehow. So the franchise continues. It's last release episodes last year. So that's quite a lengthy franchise. I'm talking about Karate Kid. I've never actually watched it before, and so I finally did it. So it's yeah um I have actually watched the first two so far today. But I'll try to talk about the first one mostly right now, even though I can't compare it and possibly would, but I'm going to try not to. I can just say though that you know at least the first couple, I'm assuming they'll try something similar in the rest. They do something very similar, and this is the problem with most franchises. When you have a one-off movie, well, I mean, it's all they ever do, so you don't know whether they just repeat something or such. But franchises do generally rehash the formula, don't they? I mean, uh, Psycho did this in a way, in a weird way, although it's just exploring different facets of his psychology. But this something similar, very similar happens, in both of them. In terms of, there's a bully, and then there's a bigger bully, and the bigger bully is also tackled in the second movie, somewhat. So it's very, it's kind of predictable. There are some things that are predictable. Well, the second one especially, I could predict because I watched it first, more easily able to predict. But the first one kind of is as well. Gotta be honest. Um, then again, I'm assuming people didn't like it because of its unpredictability. I mean, people didn't just think, oh yeah, no, he is probably going to lose. I mean, I don't know. Did anyone think they would honestly, they could honestly lose? I mean, these things just don't happen. Do they? I mean, they do happen in anime sometimes, but that's, I don't know, not in movies though. Usually movies do end with sort of a clean cut thing, and this is sort of what happens. I mean, sure. I mean, realistically, I mean, could people really train so much in an hour and a half? Or, no, actually, it was 2 hours. Obviously, there's this montage that represents. Yeah, in fact, they said it was 2 months, so I guess I'm being unfair there. Obviously, they just compressed it within uh, half an hour, actually, or so. Because the rest was, other things. I was supposed to think it's 2 months, so I guess in 2 months he could know something. But realistically, I don't know. But this guy he was supposed to go against won the championship 2 years, so he at least uh, trained for 2 years at the very least. And sure enough, you could say, oh, he was haughty, he was arrogant, he didn't think with his, what did they say, brain. Essentially, they're still trying to say that, even in the second movie, that it's not how strong people are, it's how they think, which is correct, I suppose. But in a movie, and you get this, and people feel so joyous. I'm not saying it's and below average movie. It's fine really, but um, it's also predictable though. So I mean, it's not something that is really food for thought or such. Just almost just predictable. I mean, so, people compared it to Rocky. I mean, it's I think it's made by the same director. I think it's directed by, yeah, I think it is. And I actually haven't seen Rocky yet, so it's just one of those things. I haven't watched everything on this one until today. Um, Although I probably would enjoy this more than Rocky, which is just boxing, I guess. But I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I cannot say for now. Although I do like "Eye of the Tiger." That's a song I really like. But the point is, it's one of those things, like even considering, how compressed time is for a competition in this case, for a tournament. Is it realistic? Not very much, is it? I mean, unless they really make some big mistakes, but somehow it always ends up like that, like, oh, this champion can easily defeat absolutely everyone, but somehow not the guy who's just begun training 2 months ago. Nope, not him, never. Nope, you know. um, Otherwise, though, it's I've seen worse films, so I've seen, uh, but just not incredibly original. Still, as I said, I mean, well, literally, he had just had success with Rocky, so he just copied the formula at best. Even Sylvester Stallone apparently thought that it's simply a copied version. So much, I don't know. Cannot say myself, as I said. But anyway, yeah, I'm assuming most people don't like it for just the tournament at the end. Uh, but so yeah, there's this camaraderie between the two of them, which is brilliant. I personally have no idea how one can be like that with any teacher at all. Giving bonsai trees and everything. Although I like bonsai trees. I mean, there's so nice, but I don't know. I'm assuming they're expensive, so I'm not sure how. Anyway, um, but it's so on that in that aspect, it's fine really. They really establish a rapport, and that rapport continues on in the second movie, where he says he's important to him, etc., and he's there. Anyway, I'll reserve the second movie for later, but so this is what it's about. It's about the report mainly, not but there's still a problem though, because even I mean, they just copy this sort of formula. They don't make it very original, especially after watching more than one. It's not really very original. I mean, there's just bodies everywhere, and that's pretty much it. It's the same thing, with this. You know, I mean, in the second one, there's supposed to be some sort of redemption, but I'll talk about it later. And the first one, though, there isn't really. No, actually, there is supposed to be some, which is very, very cliched, very likely. I don't know. At the end, he just randomly says, "Oh, you're alright. Oh, sure." Just after he's bullied him throughout the entire movie, suddenly he's alright. Just 10 minutes before he was telling him he's dead meat, no matter how many points. Uh, I don't know. It kind of ruins it. I mean, I don't know why they go for these simplistic things. They could have just left it out. Like, are people going to seriously consider it to be genuine? I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, this guy was a bully throughout. So how does it suddenly turn around in the last few minutes, in the last few seconds, in fact? I don't know why they go for it. I don't know why they ruin. I mean, sure enough, they didn't ruin in terms of how much profit they made. It made loads of profit, kind of like my big fat Greek wedding thing. Somehow they made loads of profit despite as a rom-com not being very special. I thought. So kind of same with this, although it's slightly different. I'm assuming, I don't know if Rocky has a older teacher or something, or if it's unique to this. But I mean, alright, there's that rapport. That's what most people like, and I thought it was the best aspect as well. So, not saying, but they just put in these things that somehow feel like they're ruining it. No, no, not totally. These small things. Most movies do have them, and most movies have these sort of one-liners that ruin the movie a bit. In this case, I mean, besides this, which was just cliched, oh, you're right, very cliched and unbelievable. That ruined it on the corny unbelievability, but there were other things as well. Like when he was training, most of the things he said was fine, but then he had to somehow um, mention his gender for some reason. I'm not sure why, but um, yeah, it sort of happened in the second movie as well. Not by the teacher though, but by bullies, which I suppose is sort of more appropriate in terms of. I mean, the teacher wasn't trying to bully him, but still, it's um, I don't know, some things. I'm just one off. I mean, it's only a split second, so it's not like doesn't ruin the entire movie or anything, and then they still have a report and such. But just I don't know why they put this. But the worst though is this thing about like have an all-out bully, and somehow he's somehow suddenly immediately totally just after being beaten up fine. Um, yeah, unbelievable, just unbelievable. That's the only problem really, and otherwise though, in terms of I don't know, well, the fact that most movies suffer from this though. When a couple meet, the attraction somehow seems so instantaneous. It's almost unbelievable. I mean, sure, it can happen, I guess. So I'm not saying it's as unbelievable as this bully suddenly turning around, saying you're right. That is much more unbelievable. But just seeing this person on a beach and suddenly eyeing each other. I mean, do these things happen? Because of course, I don't want to go into the second movie so much, but you know what happens at the second movie, which makes the first movie even more unbelievable. This is the problem. Uh, there are some things that are just too feeble. I mean, sure, the rapport between the teacher and the student is so far, pretty good, in terms of everything that happens, and but you know, it's one of those things. I mean, it's just sometimes it just feels like in many of these movies, not just this, that there are some people that are just too positive and others too negative. It's very very dichotomic sort of way of saying things, and yet they're still popular. It's if you actually check sort of Ghibli movies, they don't tend to be so much like this at all. They tend to be more good, rather than extremes. So no, it's kind of funny in a way, this because this features a Japanese character. Of course, it's not Ghibli, but it's very very dichotomic in this sense. I mean, so far at least from the second movie, doesn't seem like the teacher ever did anything wrong. Somehow he really did the things that happened to him were wrong, so he was wrong, but not so much the other way around. Which is sort of unbelievable still because not everyone is so pure, um, and whereas the student is more bullied mostly. It's not so much that he's always positive or never does anything wrong or any mistakes or anything. He sort of does, but um, it's still nothing like he doesn't bully anyone himself. So in a way, it's still very extreme in that sense. So this is the problem with these kind of movies now, mostly. And then there's sort of another issue as well with regards to some characters introduced and not really utilized very much in the sense, sort of like his mother. I mean, she doesn't appear at all, as far as I know, at all in the second movie, I think, and in the first, though, she appears just a bit. She has these quirky, odd parts, which I suppose is fine, but it's only mostly at the beginning. She just sort of disappears in the background. I mean, she's barely seen at the tournament. I'm not even sure she was there. So I don't know, just a bit uneven, sort of, for all the popularity this film is about, for how popular it is, for how much profit it made. It's still nothing absolutely perfect, I think. I guess a movie needs to be perfect to make profit or be popular or be highly rated. But personally, I do at least rate them on average higher, the more Perfect, yeah, of course. Sure enough, there's no movie that is perfect, but close to perfection, at least. That's all, really. It's not really, yeah. And this does have some weird things about it. I mean, sure enough, as I say, mostly it's the report that really matters, and the report is quite interesting. Cannot say it's not. The way it begins, slowly, you know. I could tell this is sort of, I don't know if I just threw it out there though, how they'll meet, and I thought, yeah, this must be it. When he goes to see the handyman, he'll meet him there, or he's the handyman. I thought, and guess what? He was. So I don't know if that what made that predictable. I ended up predicting it anyway. At any rate, I mean, it's just one of those things, I suppose. Um, it's not unnecessarily unbelievable, though. I suppose someone in the army ending up as a handyman. It's sort of, I don't know, maybe possibly believable in a sense, but the thing though, when he was drinking there, I'm assuming it was sake, and he was in his uniform and such. That was the depressing. I mean, considering the history, uh, wasn't explicitly mentioned. I mean, the camp was mentioned on newspaper, but I don't think the word concentration was anywhere to be found. Not sure why that was. So I mean, people, the viewers need to know the history behind it. Um, I personally also read about the division that he was supposed to have been in. 'Cause I didn't personally know either that there wasn't a division entirely made of Japanese soldiers. Apparently, and I still have no idea how that was possible when there were such a the family presumably was in such a state in the country due to some sort of weird thing that they thought. I don't know how they thought that. Um, so yeah. Anyway, in terms of how the report happens there, how it builds up when he gets drunk. Presumably he wasn't expecting him, so he got drunk because he thought he was going to remain alone. But this student came back because he didn't want to encounter the bully anymore. And yeah, that was one of the most heartfelt moments I thought. And of course, one of the funniest moments, although it doesn't exactly lead to anything funny, but still the funniest, I guess, is when he comes in for Halloween costume party just as a shower. I mean, that is something, and somehow the sensei had the idea to do that. Yes, that's good something. I don't know how anyone can come as a shower, but there we go. It worked, and it was funny. I mean, one of those things, don't laugh out loud, funny, but still funny. I thought, it's a good way to cover yourself what doesn't quite work if you just want to hide within a crowd, I suppose, and just scuttle along. No, it doesn't work at all, and it doesn't work if somebody knows that you're there. But it works if nobody wants to find out who it might be, if nobody actually knows probably who it was. But yeah, supposedly then, though his supposed girlfriend somehow knows that it's him because somehow she knows him already, despite spending so little time together. And this is why it's a bit unbelievable. I mean, she didn't really spend a lot of time together, did she? Of course, people still like it because the rapport between the teacher and the student mainly. Yes, I can see that. Now, sure enough, not all critics were positive about it. So I mean, just so this is more of a people thing or like it. 'Cause, yeah, one of those things. In fact, it no, it didn't win a People's Choice Award like so many movies before it that somehow were critically unsuccessful. So it won apparently a Young Artist Award somehow. I'm not sure what it is honestly, but there we go. So something else really doesn't really quite. Apparently, Elizabeth Shue won it. It's a bit bizarre, honestly, though, in terms of I mean, she barely did anything. Honestly, don't know how she can win it. But there we go. I kind of disagree with most things. I suppose it would be more predictable if if uh, what's he really called again? I forgot. Larusso won it. He's called Ralph Macchio. So there we go. I guess it would be predictable, but in terms of how much it's rational to give it to hair, or simply said predictable things, and I shouldn't write the script, I suppose. Um, but let's see, still on the direction. What should go? And sure, critics were simply split about this. I think I could say split at first. As usual, I have no idea how Rotten Tomatoes work. Maybe sometime at some point I'll read about it, because it's an approval rating of 88%. I'm assuming at some point, yeah, unless it's somehow static. 88% approval rating based on 43 reviews. Average rating of 6.8. I don't know how that works. How could you have an average rating of nearly 2 points less? But otherwise, yeah, it seems like the critics were indeed split. I mean, well, not so much as in, I think most of them here, at least the ones quoted here, which aren't many exactly, but there's about three, I think, on the Wikipedia page specifically this, and including the Tomatoes review, which is supposed to be some sort of consensus. Not sure how they reach it, but yeah, it calls it predictable. So um, I do, by the way, try to read reviews, what others say before I actually say whatever here. So I'm not influenced, but it's interesting to know that others also think it's predictable. Personally, I found it funny that the second one was so much more predictable, because I watched the first, of course. So yeah, very very much more predictable. Um, so yeah, it's and sure enough, they agree that the rapport between the two is mostly yeah, call it relaxed chemistry. So I suppose that's yeah, I didn't call that myself, but makes sense. Um, then of course Ebert seemed to think it was perfect or something for the 4 stars. Exciting, sweet-tempered, heartwarming story. I mean, sure, maybe it is, although it's just not to the level maybe he seemed to think they were. Most interesting friendships. I mean, sure, I suppose they might be. But, watching more than one at any rate. One of the problems as well. I mean, I could just reserve this for the second one, but I think it really impacts the whole franchise. I mean, they they made the teacher speak like that, right? Because apparently, even in real life, the Japanese teacher didn't know much English, but the problem of how he speaks, of course. Broken English and everything. It's one thing if it's just one movie, one off. Just you just brush it off as an individual who simply has such a vocabulary. But the problem here is that on this, but the second movie, and presumably others, unless somehow they're back in the US. So I mean, it ends up being a very poor stereotype. You know that somehow Japanese people, all of them somehow cannot speak English, just cannot. And of course, the stupid stereotype is that they all speak like him. Like, what are they, clones of him? I mean, in natural circumstances, everyone has their own vocabulary clearly, and somehow, so they all have his vocabulary. It's like he cloned them, and somehow the vocabulary is just that's it. That's all they can have. They were born with such a vocabulary. Probably he did as well. It's almost like a sci-fi story without even intending to be one. It's a bit absurd, isn't it? But otherwise, I mean, whatever, really. I suppose. Now, there's another review here by Donald Stevens, who says that the original because it was a review comparing, I'm assuming, the original with the remake. The original is smart, feels smart and fresh, it says, with a wealth of small character details and leisurely middle section. Because the boy is developing respect for his teacher. I mean, sure, sure. But I'm still amazed that somehow it's absolutely so profitable. I mean, as usual, I don't exactly watch many though. These so I mean, I was more amazed with the rom-com I watched that somehow was the most profitable rom-com ever. Because I don't think most rom-coms are. So I cannot quite compare to others I've watched. I haven't exactly. I don't know the last time. I've watched some sports films though, generally, not specifically about karate though. So, but generally, sports films, I've never noticed that they're usually very, very profitable. Yeah, so but I don't watch too many of them either, so but it still made a huge amount, right? I mean, I don't know compared to others, but budget of 8 million, 100 million box office, it was unbelievable. Which is no wonder, I suppose, that a franchise was made out of it. Hmm. But one of those things. It's a bit, yeah. Ultimately, so this is the problem. It is too predictable, and things I just there isn't anything novel, anything new, anything special, anything different from others. You know what it can mostly be compared to as well, as opposed to, I mean, most sports movies, which I cannot quite relate to because I don't watch that many, and but I suppose, yeah, coming of age movies and high school movies generally can be compared to it, I suppose. But even then, I mean, I don't think they generally make so much. But yeah, whatever. It's it's not too bad ultimately. It's above average, above. I mean, it's not mediocre. It's not below at least. But of course, the problem is most when it comes to the entire franchise, which apparently is sort of a microcosm of this one movie. Apparently, seems like. I mean, if I can extrapolate at least. So it's not so much a problem with this one movie, more of with the franchise but the 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 movie is still very predictable. So to make everything based on this movie is a bit just a bit just tiny bit But anyway, ultimately, I mean I know I may be complaining too much here, so whatever. Don't think it matters so much really. It's a fine movie. It's okay. It's just not. I mean, I wouldn't pay 100 million to watch it, but anyway, it's fine. Whatever. People watch whatever they want there. So about the sequel, I noticed that this is where things began to fray a bit. Despite that, though, it still apparently was nominated for an Oscar. I mean, yeah, people are just extreme generally. I just yeah. I mean, the third, then I think got nominated for Raspberry Award. So we go from Oscars to Raspberry Awards. Great, and of course the fourth is rated, uh, on average for over 10 by people, and these are some of a few movies where apparently both critics and general population possibly think alike a bit. I mean, in terms of how how bizarrely somehow amazing the original was in comparison to the others, but I personally don't see how. I can only see it as being similar, very similar. Um, so I don't know why. You know, but the second is when apparently people are still um, just a bit, not too divergent in comparison. I mean, it's still. See, I think the evidence in all this is, in all this ridiculousness is in the references that all movies have. So the last two have 30 each. That is, references and features and such. About 30, right? That's in, when all movies and series and stuff ever made, I consider. 30. The last two. The second has 40, apparently. The first one has 700. Like, seriously? That's how extreme people are. I don't understand it. I mean, I'm not assuming, that they should. I mean, obviously, and if you're going to reference sort of, the franchise as a whole, I suppose you might as well reference the first movie. And I'm not saying the references by themselves, mean much, but it's a general sort of thing, and it sort of reflects as well with what critics and audience said of the sequels generally, as opposed to how much they praise the original, which I don't get. I mean, sure enough, the original so it didn't technically copy anything before it, but they all had the same thing. So I don't know how the original was so much better. So yeah, I mean, this was so. I mean, this is the thing. I think it might have been cinematographically, it was brilliant. I think it was the best movie out of four cinematographically, because it's set. Of course, it's supposed to be set in Japan, but it's really set in Hawaii. Either way, it's still cinematographically pretty brilliant. Um, yeah, uh, I thought many scenes were GIF worthy. Um, so on the front it is. Obviously, and in the context of the story, sure enough, things are repeated, sort of a template, bullies, etc. Sure enough, the ending is stereotypical, maybe quite, a template of the one before it or the one after. So in that sense, it is a bit unique in that aspect. Um, in a way, sort of similar to the fourth actually, because it's not set in a tournament either. That's pretty much it. But this is the thing. I mean, mostly, I mean, there are minor differences between all these movies, but they're all really similar. Otherwise, it's I mean, personally, I mean, as I say, though, I like them pretty much. About on average, the same sort of thing. But if we consider cinematography, if we consider the unique factors in the second one, then I think it might be possibly, I'm saying possibly better than the first, the third, or the fourth. Of course, people don't seem to think that at all, but it's it's really very similar. Otherwise, you know, the only problem I had is how much. I mean, they translated some Japanese, but not all. They left a lot untranslated for some reason, and unfortunately, I do not know enough to know what mostly they were saying. Um, it's kind of annoying, they had this tendency to begin a conversation by saying something in Japanese and then continuing in English for some reason. And that's a bit bizarre, to be honest. I would have preferred if you just continue on with Japanese, but with subtitles, of course. Um, Otherwise, still, it was a different atmosphere. So I preferred it. It's just different, because the first, the third, and the fourth are all set in mainland US. I mean, it was filmed in Hawaii. The second, that is, but it's supposed to be set in Japan, that is, but filmed in Hawaii. At any rate, they did create that atmosphere. So honestly, before I read that it was set in Hawaii, I couldn't have figured it out. Maybe if I thought a bit, but Hawaii is close to Japan anyway, so it's that's sort of that's why the illusion sort of works, I suppose. Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, um, many reviews of this, not most, in fact, about half and half seem to be, half are positive, half are negative. That's still a lot more negative than the first one had, which is absurd because they're otherwise very similar. But as I said, there it might be even better in my opinion because of these unique factors as mentioned. Um, uh, and they had so much uniqueness. Honestly, like the Auburn Festival, cool to know. The small drum. Um, there was a lot that they introduced, whereas with the others, it's all of the same. So the others had much more of the same than this one had. So in that sense, I'm not sure how people can complain. Honestly, I mean, all right. I mean, the story was still there. There was still police, so it was still the same. But the minor things that differentiate one from the other, this had more, I think. So yeah. It also had a severe weather event, which none of the others did. So there were some differences, you know. I think that my biggest complaint is how Sato made a 360 degree sort of turn, and somehow became all honorable, so honorable. This after thrashing an entire village and really thrashing it more than anyone ever thrashed anything before in all the other movies combined. Probably he even employed a goddamn tractor, right, to thrash it. Somehow he thinks he still has any honor left. Yeah, that's a bit, that's the thing, they really shouldn't do that. Like it's one thing if Kreese remains just you know um rotten throughout, and actually get someone to help him, to exact revenge. Never check. But I mean, all right. I admit that at least this is another difference. There wasn't a second where the villain turns around. There is one other person who doesn't turn around, but this one does. Supposedly, but it's not believable. This is the problem. Um. So, also in the subsequent movie, Miyagi claims that he had to pay to repair the house. Now, if he really turned around, he would have paid himself. So, I think we have evidence here in the next movie that he didn't really, and he was only really, bullshitting really, in other words, just because, he had to save shares was, oh, let's just show him, um, one might say it might be a cultural difference as to how he approaches it as opposed to other villains and the mainland there, but I don't think. I mean, for someone who like he even bought a castle and prevented people from um, doing their dance, which they did before. So he doesn't care about culture. That's the evidence there. And so, I mean, he was really ruthless. Like was probably the most ruthless villain. I mean, all because of his, like that guy that dumps nuclear waste in the third movie is quite ruthless as well, and supposed to be wealthy as well, but he doesn't quite do as much damage to the environment. I mean, yeah, he dumps nuclear waste, but I mean, to the nearby environment, to where he lives, the city he's in, and such. Like Sato does for the village. He literally touches it. So this is why I don't believe it's he really reformed. I don't and I think it's unbelievable. Really. In a way, it would have been more believable that they just did the usual like they did for literally just all other three movies where Miyagi just fights the other villain and Daniel fights the lesser villain, etc. It just happens so often, right? Every single time. In a way, it's one is actually in one way it's good that it's unique, you know. But on the other, it's not quite believable even in this aspect at least. And yet, you know, on the other factor yet again, you know, the cinematography is pretty nice to look at, you know, the set. So uh, yeah, but personally, I think I would prefer this movie over the others, but still ultimately, you know, it's not exactly, you know, the most. Mm. So, but yeah, ultimately, I'm not entirely sure why I kept talking about these movies so much. I wouldn't have done it honestly if people hadn't just rated them all so strangely, because you know, just felt like I needed to say something about it. I don't know why, but anyway, I did. Here we go now. So, whatever. On average, they're okay, but you know, not so much. You know, generally not that much. You know, just whatever. And the third Karate Kid movie is um well, the usual, um like the I think it was the director himself admitted, in which case, you know, I'm not sure why he did this, if he saw it and, you know, he acknowledged it, but, you know, very samey, obviously, but I mean, sure, it does have some other things, but, you know, still, samey, isn't it? Just like the first, mostly. Not so much the second. The second is more greenery, more Japan than the first or the third or the fourth. Um, but you know, personally, as I mentioned um, many other times, I'm not entirely sure what people say that's so different about this. Um, I mean, you know, it's you know, same as I said. So, I mean, you know, it does do things that are very similar to the first in particular, and even the second. I mean, you know, in terms of the bullies and such. But then I don't get how people. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, the, you know, ratings are whatever, but it's remarkable though that the average Joe somehow. So I mean, the average person, the average viewer specifically, obviously, seem to think somehow the original is so much better than every other one. But, I mean, I don't know. Just sometimes I just try to understand, you know, why people rate, you know, however they rate. I'm not entirely sure I get very much. I mean, you know, what the third had different, interesting than the others. So let's just begin there, maybe. Is the bonsai connection? I guess one could say. I mean, you know, it began in the first episode, but then, you know, I don't think there was much in the second, ironically. But the third had, yeah, a bit more. The fourth had none as well. But yeah, the third had this thing, you know, with the, you know, the, what was it called, the Devil's Cliff or something, and it was quite something. They did some abseiling there to get that supposedly original bonsai tree, and you know, I mean, it was a nice view in a sense, you know, I mean, better than, you know, where that shop was, which was quite derelict. Not great to look at. There was a train constantly passing by. So yeah, that's not exactly. I mean, I suppose they wanted to go for gritty, but it's not very nice to just watch. You know, I mean, sure, the whole movie wasn't set there, but there, there were, you know, a few minutes at least. I mean, not everything, but obviously there were fights set there, but even when they just plain talking, you know, just the train just going by, very close by, with all that noise is just annoying. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, this thing, that deep hole, the cliffs, the ocean as well. I think more of the ocean was seen in the third movie than all the other movies, I think. But yeah, it's something. I mean, it's not necessarily worse than the other movies. I and I also don't know what makes it very fundamentally different. I mean, sure, every movie has these small differences, but yeah, ultimately they are quite similar. They're more similar than they are different, and the director seemed to admit that. But that's the point, though. If they're so similar, I don't know why people seem to think that they're much worse. I honestly don't know. I just, you know. Um, so apparently, Rotten Tomatoes calls it, as I said, inspiration, social, but also scenery chewing performances. That's a weird way to put it. I'm assuming that refers to the actual scenery. Maybe, I don't know. No idea. Um, and as usual, the general audiences seem to rate it slightly higher than the critics rated. But yeah, sure enough, the others. I mean, I don't get how, sometimes it's not just the critics. So I mean, I'm not sure how cinema score here seems to have gotten this on the scale. Maybe people back then or whenever it was. But the ongoing rating of the movie doesn't exactly indicate. So in terms of how the average rating evolves over time, seems to coincide with what critics seem to think, and I just don't get it. I mean, like if you don't think that the sequels are good, then why is the original good as well? Because the original is still very similar. I mean, sure, it technically doesn't have duplication like the sequels have, but that's only because they come after. So if the third movie came in the first place, would they have rated the third movie in the first place higher than the first movie in the third place? It's a bit absurd. I don't tend to rate based on simply. I guess people do, but yeah, maybe I don't rate based on things are duplicated within a franchise. I don't know, but if movies in a franchise are very similar, I just think of them similarly. Simple as that, really. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, just um, and like Ebert apparently, from what I remember, gave the first film 4 out of 4, but somehow just didn't like this, and people just commended the performance of Griffith. It's just yeah, I don't get it. So one of those things. And like, yeah, Ebert here says that the villain is, one-dimensional and such, and I guess that's true. But I mean, I don't get how people, can think that, just about sequels, because in the first movie, what's he called? The guy that runs the Cobra Kai dojo was fairly one-dimensional as well. Only thing we know about him is that he was in Vietnam, Miyagi, except obviously we get more of a backstory with Miyagi. But this is what I don't get. How could people be? Uh, of course, Ebert was somehow considered to be, I don't know, some sort of well, yeah. I mean, just I don't get it. I don't get it. Some people don't make logical sense though. Clearly, I mean, how come for 4 stars for the first movie and how much? Oh yeah, 1.5 stars. Huh. Wow, people are extreme, aren't they? I mean, so, 4 stars isn't exactly a lot, but you know, um, well, 2.5 stars is still a lot more, I suppose, and I know relatively. So on this front, I suppose. Well, I suppose here, giving it even less than half than what was given before is even more extreme in a way than the average rating, which gives it about uh, one less than. But even in comparison to the original, it's two less. Not half. That would have been like four or three, 3.5. So I don't know. I'm just saying that people are extreme in a way. In this sense, average ratings are even more slightly more sensible, but some critics honestly lose it, or honestly just I don't get it. I mean, I've noticed some other opinions that Ebert used to some other I've forgotten I thought which movie. I mean, yeah, it didn't always it did seem somewhat random, really, in how he reviewed. Um, I mean, otherwise, yeah, sure, what he says, yeah, in the review, it does copy, yeah, everyone knows that. But you know, and even if in the first movie we get to discover Miyagi bit by bit and such, well, I mean, still discover some things, yeah. We're not quite, characters and new. Well, there are new characters, but not quite. We don't quite discover them in the same way, so sure enough. But the point is, it's still very similar. So this is what I don't get. I mean, alright, it's one thing to maybe think slightly less highly of it than the original or the previous one, but it's still befuddling though because it's not very different. It's just not. So if people like the bully storyline so much from the first, what's so wrong about this? It's still a bully story. I'm not saying personally, but, a storyline with bullying or continually doing this storyline, for at least movies is really the best thing ever. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to be consistent here. That's all I think. And consistency, I think, is useful in evaluating and trying to at least objectively. Um, I mean, in this sense, I don't get what the point of professional critics is, honestly, when they seem to be random in this sense, no consistency whatsoever. I mean, just um, it's too extreme, isn't it? I actually haven't read Ebert's original review, but I did notice he gave it 4 stars. So um, on IMDb it would be presumably 10/10. That is some extreme stuff, right? I mean, personally, I don't know why it really deserves 10/10. It's not quite that good. I'm not saying that this franchise is amazing or anything. It's mediocre. It's maybe above average, but you know, on its release, Roger Ebert called the film one of the year's best. Gave it 4 stars out of 4. Described as an exciting, sweet-tempered, heartwarming story, one of the most interesting friendships in a long time. Oh, come on, really? I mean, sure, it might be all those, but the best movie of the year? And in comparison to all the sequels, apparently, it's so much better, right? Oh, come on, really? I mean, they're all very similar. I honestly don't know what people see of this. I have no idea. And as I said before, the same exact, pretty much, nearly the same exact thing with the Psycho franchise as well, which, is slightly different genre, but same thing pretty much. I just don't get it. You know, in the first Psycho movie, we're seeing how one person operates, how his mind operates. In the second and third and fourth and fifth, however much there were, we are seeing how this one person operates. And maybe a few other people. I mean, what is so different? Um, Whatever. I just, um, I'm probably going to just remain as befuddled as I am when confronting the fact that um, Olympus Has Fallen has made millions in box office profits when it's the most scriptless, heartless movie ever, the most mundane and whatever. You know what I mean? I talked about it for 50 minutes, so if anyone cares for my complaints about, I mean, that was honestly one of the worst action movies I've seen. Now, I'm not saying Karate Kid is in a similar vein, one of the worst action movies. I mean, in a way, yeah. But, it's also considered an action movie, So in a way, obviously, karate is martial arts instead of guns, and personally, I prefer this martial arts. Guns are so weak, stupid, and such. Not to mention we don't get to see him. Well, we nearly don't get to see him being falling at this. Yeah, in Karate Kid, on the other hand, he falls many times. Sure, hmm. Maybe not quite lose, but still falls. So I mean, it's more moderate, yeah. But one of the best films of the year. Hell, he probably thought best films ever. It's it's absurd. It's just, but yeah. Let's see what he said else. Actually, this was in '84. I don't know. Maybe back then he was a bit too young and easily impressed. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Honestly, I just I don't even know how people end up doing this as a profession, but I don't get. I mean, what he did that was so remarkable. I'm assuming though. Anyway, let's not assume anything. And what do you know? It's not found. 404. So I don't think I can read the original review. Assuming I could find it in the Internet Archive, but I cannot seem to find it here at least. Actually, did I even? Yeah, I don't think I can. No, 404. Yeah. So for some reason, it's gone. But anyway, I just don't get it. I just don't get it at all. Yeah. Personally, I've liked all of these movies nearly near the same manner. I mean, there's very little difference. I haven't really, I haven't really come out thinking any one of them is the best film I've ever watched this year. I mean, I watch a lot of films and movies, so it's kind of difficult, obviously, but well, I'm assuming even just due to the fact, the sample size of this, is kind of hefty, I suppose. So, well, yeah, I suppose it's more difficult to, be the best film I've ever seen, but I have seen better. I've seen better. I mean, generally, I think more highly of, maybe plain drama or, sci-fi or even some comedies. I just think of more highly, but I don't know. I personally do not think any one of these is the best thing ever. Otherwise, they're all fairly similar. I really don't get it. But yeah, what I guess. Oh, and so-called Scott Weinberg of the website Joblo. I've never heard of either of those, but yeah, I mean, okay, I like the description. The world's last home-cooked meatloaf. It's quite descriptive, but it's I don't know. But he describes the villains as cartoonish. Now, as I said, I'm saying that they're not, but he continues on to say it all feels cynical and hollow, which is not the vibe we get from part one, right? And he even seemed to capitalize, not. Well, I don't know. Maybe I have like different eyes or something. Somehow I'm just like a different species, and or maybe I'm missing something. Or look, what is the difference? What on earth is the difference between Kreese? In fact, Kreese, you know, what a strange name by the way. John Kreese, right, played by Martin Cove, is in both the first and the third movies actually. So if he thinks, so literally this is a supposed critic, I think, I don't know, or it doesn't seem like there's even, I don't know who he is, but anyway, usual anyway, um, he's literally saying that the villains here, which includes Kreese for a bit at least, is cartoonish, but somehow in the first one he's not. Wow, really? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was cartoonish in the first one as well, and so was what was it called again? The other blonde guy, which currently also plays Isaac in Cobra Kai currently in the current thing, uh, think series, Um, and, I think by the way, I'm not going to watch it yet because I don't tend to watch ongoing current series because obviously if I begin it now, then I'll finish watching it up until the point when and apparently there's like a third season in 2021, so I'll obviously only be able to watch a couple of seasons and then I'll be forced to watch it. There's nothing else. Apparently, there's going to be a fourth season as well, which probably is the year after. So anyway, I'm just going to watch it for now. I made the decision though to watch these movies for some reason. I mean, obviously most people I'm assuming did this as well. You know, obviously if they were if they existed back in '84, they would have watched it then. But I mean, sure, I suppose I don't know people who watch ongoing. I suppose would watch them as they come out. So every every 5 years or so, as this was, which I didn't. But yeah, personally, if I knew, I thought to be honest, if I knew that there was a series that is ongoing somehow from 2018 somehow. I mean, most series really do not just. It's not like there's hundreds of episodes. Even it's not like it's continually ongoing. But I don't know. They seem to be taking their leisurely time. Um, but I'm going to wait anyway. Now, when it finishes, I don't know if I'm going to rewatch these movies. Um, or read a summary, a synopsis, or something, or plot or something to remember. But I thought this is not too complex a franchise, as I said. So even if I just continue it, even though it's just a person not incredibly interested in Cobra Kai itself specifically. So yeah, apparently there's an animation as well for it, which I might possibly leave for later. No, I might leave the remake as well for later. Which made a ridiculous amount of box office, by the way. Clearly, people in this case were driven by nostalgia. Clearly, right? I'm surprised that it's taken at least 8 years to go start a series after 2010, after it made like 170 million or something. Ridiculous. Yeah, just I don't know. I'm surprised. Actually, I think there are loads of remakes everywhere, but when remakes make so much money, then clearly it's just simply saying, yeah, make remakes, make money, yeah, why not? I mean, Jaden Smith didn't even have to gamble on whether or not he might possibly be successful with this. I mean, well, I suppose. But the worst he could have done is, done as bad as the fourth movie, which still made profit, not exactly tens of millions, but about 3 million apparently, unless of course there were more costs that weren't accounted for, that fell outside of the budget. I don't know, just so um, it's just so bizarre. Like even the fact that in the first movie on Rotten Tomatoes, it has an approval rating of 88% based on 43 reviews. 80%. Just one of those things. Yes. Um. They're very, very strange indeed. What did I need again? To sure. Yeah. So but yeah, as I said personally, I think that's all fairly, fairly, fairly similar. So the people saying that the first movie didn't have cartoonish villains, I could debate them on that. I certainly could. Um, Martin Cove very much plays a cartoonish villain. I think the most cartoonish one could say, in all other movies as well. And so does really pretty much, slightly less maybe, but so does who was he again? Yeah, William Zabka's character, Johnny Lawrence. Both are very good. What's his backstory? Oh, great. He's an ex of Karate Kid's current com got interest. I mean, it's all cartoon. I don't. People really have some sort of maybe it's the time or something that did this because even Psycho waited a while to release each movie. I don't get how people can think that the first one is so much more amazing than the others. Personally, I thought they were very, very similar. Fairly similar. But, just, the makers, the writers, the creators, director must be as baffled. What's the difference? So apparently he did admit on the third one that things are recycled. So we get that at least. But, you know, it's not exactly um and I mean, it has some interesting moments as well. Some, yeah, sure, funny, but I mean, funny isn't bad. I mean, all of them have funny moments, really. But the bit with the broom. So, I actually predicted it. I mean, it's not exactly the most unpredictable thing, but I predicted that sort of humor would happen. Most because before that at least I had never heard of the verb to sweep in any other context other than for an actual broom and such. And knowing that Miyagi did take things literally for humorous effect before, I thought it would happen, and it did. He just got out a broom, and then somehow the guy was offended for some reason. Um, I found it funny. I think that was the funniest bit. Yeah, it was. Hmm. But, so ultimately, though, as I say, I probably shouldn't really go on so much about all this, really, for some reason. But it's just bizarre. So the first one got an Oscar nomination. Didn't win, but got an Oscar nomination. The third one then gets apparently 4 Raspberry Award nominations. Still doesn't win any. But what's wrong with that? I mean, I don't get it. They are similar, unless I'm missing something. They are similar. And the same guy who got the Oscar nomination got a Raspberry Award nomination as well. I guess it would be even more absurd if Raspberry Awards were managed by the Academy, I suppose. I'm not sure they are, but not entirely sure about them. I don't really know very much about it, but I mean, it would be more absurd. It would be much more consistent. I guess if they are managed by different organizations, then sure enough, different organizations do whatever they want. I suppose, just, they generally do. But still, as an industry as a whole, in the whole. they're quite weird. They're what was good to say. Um, Apparently it's co-founded by UCLA from graduates. Um, but yeah, it's they try to proceed themselves to have some self, I suppose. Um, but yeah, ultimately, as I say, even if it's not managed by the same people, really, it's absurd. I mean, Nori Yuki, Miyagi, practically played the same character in all four. What's so different about it then? If you criticize him in the third movie, then to be consistent, you need to criticize him in the first movie. Instead, they made it in the first guy. Yeah, it just makes sense. Yeah, just one of those bizarre man. Other than that, sure enough, criticize it for repeating themes, the shared family, but ultimately they all have the same thing. That's the whole point. And I'm repeating things myself now anyway, so still up here. Now, with regards to, and this is all pretty much a constant issue, really, when it comes to, you know, um, uh, sequels and such. I really don't get people, and just, just one of those things, as I always say, like the Psycho franchise, it's so strange, the original is so highly rated, even more than this, and the others, the absolute opposite. It's just absurd, really. I mean, honestly, I mean, most franchises really are mostly, similar to each other. So I don't know how. And the same thing with this, with the fourth movie in the Karate Kid franchise. Um, so I've no idea. I mean, one of those things. And I remember with Psycho, the movies where the sequels at least were more similarly rated, apparently. Um, so I mean, they were only different really from the original mostly, but the others were still, still very lowly rated though. But at least they were sort of similarly rated, I think, from what I remember. Not with the Karate Kid movies, so apparently for some reason. Still not sure why. I mean, just it's really strange. I don't know what else. I mean, like the first and the third, for example, right? Let's just say the first and because the second was set in Japan, actually, so the second was slightly different. But the first and the third were very similar. I mean, honestly, the entire franchise is very similar generally. But the second and third, were set in a similar sort of neighborhood. Similar things happen. So there was even a tournament. I mean, how much more similar can one get? I honestly have no idea what people see different. And when I say different, I mean that yeah. So the first one is rated 7.3, and the third one is rated 5.2. Why do they get these things from? I don't get it. I mean, maybe I don't know. I'm assuming maybe they got a bit bored of saying the same thing. Maybe that kind of valid. It is a lot of the same thing. But the point is, why? I mean, I don't know. It still makes no sense though, because I mean, I don't know. Well, you either bored of this sort of thing, in which case the first one isn't so highly rated on average, or at least it would be, or you're not bored, in which case all movies aren't so separate, really. So this is why it makes no sense to me personally, just like the Psycho franchise. Um, I think they're very similar. Somehow, though, it's really weird how these are rated. Not that ratings mean anything ultimately, but it's a bit of weird trivia, I guess. But so the original Karate Kid is rated 7.3. The sequel, Part 2, 6.1. And apparently, it made more profit than the original. So people did have expectations. It made more profit. But then they didn't like it as much. At least, IMDb raters didn't. And, but, yeah, maybe moviegoers as well. Cinema goers didn't like it as much either. Because then they didn't go watch part 3 so much either. It got much less in box office. It did. And in rating as well. So you can keep going there. So people on average rated, 7.3, 6.1, 5.2, and this one. It's ridiculous. 4.4. Like, the people seriously just, watch them all and think, oh yeah, the first one is this, and we go back down on one, another one, and another. What the hell is wrong with these people? So if there were 10 in the franchise, would they begin with 10, 9, 8, 7? I don't know. It's the most absurd thing ever. I mean, generally, personally, I don't know. Maybe something just, maybe something could be wrong with my system, but, I don't understand how people work really. It's not like, I don't ever rate even within the same franchise, differently. But if they're very similar, then I rate them similarly. I think it's just generally the thing, so. And personally, I didn't find this fourth one very different either. It was similar to the third, at least, possibly more maybe high schooly, but otherwise still similar. As I say, I have no idea what people think is the issue here. Why it's so different from the first even. They're all very similar, and the odd one out really is the second, because that's set in Japan, and the setting is very different, and it's just more green generally. That's with regards to cinematography. But yeah, I have no idea what's wrong with the fourth one in this case. I mean, people apparently hate it all. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess if everyone had their way, I guess there would only be one movie ever for anything. There would be no franchises, presumably. Presumably, I don't know. Yeah, clearly they like Marvel franchises. They keep producing them, but I don't get it. Even with Psycho, as I said, it's I think something similar happened even with regards to box office, but then yet again, just like Karate Kid, something similar happened as well in terms of well, they tried to redo the first one in 2010, and then they ended up doing a series, yeah, which is still ongoing apparently. So I don't know. Yeah, the unfortunate thing, though, clearly here, the biggest regret I think with the next Karate Kid, part 4, is the fact that since supposedly they didn't make as much money, although apparently they still made profit, just not a lot. But in their opinion, they just didn't. And they thought presumably if they made part 5, they wouldn't make any profit at all or something, because they only made like 3 million here or something. But the most regretful thing, in my opinion, is the fact that this is it. This was the last movie no UK Morita ever did for Karate Kid. That is, he did other stuff, but for this was the last. It's such a pity. I don't know what's wrong with people. And I mean they still. So it's not like this isn't an issue with just in '94 or just I mean, more current ratings as well. But people still hate on it for some reason, and I see absolutely really no difference. You know, but practically at least, no difference. I mean, obviously there is a difference in terms of the actor themselves, but then again, people didn't like the second and third either, so I don't know. They can't really complain too much about actor changing if they didn't even like the same actor. Um, but it's one of those things. I mean, uh, yeah, I really don't know what is wrong with people, really, that they think of it like this. I mean, I thought it was interesting. What I didn't like as such is how they begin it. I'm not sure why they decided to begin it so militaristically. That's not really very much in the vein of it. In fact, I always thought that it was sort of this thing where, there is, militaristic karate teaching in all the movies, which sort of contrasts with Miyagi's more soft-natured approach to it. Uh, so, beginning militaristically was a bit out of kilter, I guess. I mean, sure enough, it was mentioned before that he was in um, the 442nd, regimental combat team, but they didn't have to begin it as such. I thought, I don't know. Anyway, other than that, though, yeah, the hawk being there was kind of cool. Hawks are cool. They look very similar to eagles, don't they? So yeah, I mean that's something interesting. I mean, in the other three movies there weren't actually any pets, were there? So that's a bonus, really. Not sure how anyone could rate this. Ooh, 4.4 with a hawk in it. Hawk. Yeah, it's pretty cool. To have a hawk, I thought. So it's I really don't get why. I mean, other than that, there are bullies, which there were in all the movies as well. I mean, yeah, I can sort of see why, one can criticize the franchise for being repetitive in this sense, but I still don't get why, the first one is, so much better. I personally generally rate movies in a franchise based on um, how they are really on their own. Really. It's not necessarily whether or not they're in a franchise at any rate. Usually I do compare them with others in the genre, um, but the first one had bullies as well, and having bullies isn't exactly the most original thing ever either. So I'm not sure even if they're rating on originality. I mean, I mean, for people to rate. Anyway, let's just stop here. I think I made my point there. I still think it's remarkable that there's a difference of three something between all movies. Uh, it's a bit much, but never mind, never mind. Whatever. I mean, the fact also that they went to a Buddhist monastery, so that place was pretty cool, right? That place alone is not worth four, is it? I think I saw those the ocean stone things for the first time in a movie because before then I only came across it in the PlayStation 2 Inuyasha video game, but they looked really cool. Obviously, I mean, I assume that they existed for real because they really did try to depict a realistic mansion. So yeah, but yeah, it's the whole atmosphere and everything. It was kind of similar to the second movie when they went to Japan itself. Obviously, slightly different in the sense that it's not an entire village; it's just full of monks, but it's its own thing. And when they went bowling, I mean, that was such a brilliant scene. That alone, I think elevates the movie. Really, it's funny. It's mostly a funny scene. That what happens there. Um, so I don't get though. Obviously, when it comes to I mean, yeah, one other weakness within the whole franchise is the fact that um they always somehow need to find someone to date for some reason. Like no matter what, they absolutely need to find someone. That is a weakness. But that also happened in the first movie. So people cannot possibly complain that it happens if they think so highly of the first movie because it happens there as well. So whatever. I'm not trying to understand people now. People are weird. I don't know. Yeah. It's just It's generally not original. I mean, yeah, it's in countless of coming of age movies, I guess. The problem, of course, is when you consider the entire franchise. Somehow, especially when it comes to Daniel's character himself. That's a cool Daniel. Somehow he has a new partner every single movie. Up to the third movie, it's a bit far fetched somehow. And somehow it happened just because they were unavailable for some reason or another. I'm not sure if any of them then, if the script writers, that is, if the person who wrote it specifically didn't want them, or they were they ended up like that in such a situation. But yeah, I mean, just otherwise, so it's still an interesting movie. Just it's the same though. Obviously, that's what I'm saying. So it's not like I'm rating it, higher or much lower. Just saying it's the same. That's the whole point. Um, I just don't quite understand how though. Um, Now, what's weird though is that I mean, yeah, critics were critical of it for some reason. Not sure why, as I said, because it's the same really. But what's weird is that apparently audiences in general didn't think too badly of it. Apparently, gave it a B plus from an A plus to F scale. So that I'm not sure though. Well, I mean, it's weird because I'm not sure how it got. I mean, it made some profit, but not even comparable to what it did before. So yeah. So it's strange why general audiences would rate that somehow, but not. Hmm, very strange indeed. So the Rotten Tomatoes consensus apparently only cares about the fact that it's a pre-Oscars swank. Like really, I'm not sure I even watched anything else. Why would I care about this movie just because she's pre-Oscars? I mean, Noriyuki didn't win any Oscar. He was nominated for the first movie, but didn't win it. But do I care about it? Do I care? I mean, well, I know I win Oscars in general. I honestly do not. But why would a consensus thinks that it's only noteworthy because she's pre-Oscars? I'm assuming this wasn't, the consensus wasn't reached back when it came out. It was reached after, obviously, she got her Oscars. So people just went back and rewatched the franchise and then somehow thought, oh no, for some reason this is so much worse than the others. So much worse for some reason. Unnecessary, they call it. I mean, it was unnecessary. Was the first necessary? Was the second slightly less necessary? It makes no sense. These are movies. What's necessary or not about it, honestly. Just, I don't get it. You know? I mean, I can criticize a movie. I did before. I've criticized many movies. standalone or franchises or otherwise. But I don't get this. They're all very similar. Like with the Psycho franchise, they're all very similar as well. But somehow the first one people think is worth an 8, and the last one is way is worth the 5 or 4 as well. I mean, it's ridiculous. They were all very similar still. So what's so different about them? I don't get it. Personally, I didn't rate the first one so high, and I didn't rate the last one so low either. So honestly, some moderation is key, I think. Yeah. I personally don't know what's different. That's pretty much it. And like, Holden here says that it doesn't have surface credibility. I mean, what credibility? It's really, as far as I know, it's very similar to the other movies. So if this is incredible, then the others wouldn't be either. I don't get what's so different. I'm just that's all really mostly. I don't get personally. I thought it was okay, but so were the others. I don't think the others were too incredibly special. This was okay. Maybe the second is the best for cinematography, but otherwise they're all very similar.